There's a house in the suburbs of Portland, Oregon. It's not a grand house, not one that would catch your eye from the street. It's the kind of place you drive past every day and never notice, with a manicured lawn and a swing set in the backyard that hasn't been used in years. It looks like the perfect picture of quiet, American domesticity. But inside those walls, a secret has been kept for 35 years, a truth so twisted and tragic that it could unravel a family thread by thread. And it all began with a girl named Anya. Anya was born into a world of contradictions. She was a child of love, but one shrouded in mystery from the very first breath she took. She was told her mother, a beautiful, free-spirited woman named Lily, had died shortly after childbirth. Her father, a kind, gentle man named Robert, took her in and raised her as his own. He was a pillar of strength and a beacon of unconditional love. He was the only father she had ever known, and she loved him with all her heart. But even as a child, she felt a subtle, lingering strangeness in their relationship. He was kind, but his kindness sometimes felt laced with a profound sadness she couldn't understand. His eyes, a shade of deep hazel just like hers, often held a distant, haunted look when he spoke of her mother. Their life together was a carefully constructed fiction, a beautiful lie. Robert told her stories of Lily, painting her as a vibrant, adventurous artist who filled every room with light and laughter. He would show her old photographs, a young woman with a wild mane of auburn hair and a constellation of freckles across her nose, and Anya would cling to these images, trying to piece together a mother she never knew. Her childhood was filled with the usual joys and sorrows: school dances, scraped knees, first heartbreaks. But running beneath the surface of this normal life was an undercurrent of unspoken grief and a sense of something fundamentally wrong. Anya grew up a spitting image of the woman in the photographs. She inherited Lily's fiery hair and her intense, inquisitive eyes. And as she got older, the questions grew more persistent. She wanted to know more about her mother's family, the grandparents she never met. Robert would always shut down, his face clouding over with a silent pain. "They're gone, Anya," he would say, his voice strained. "It was a long time ago." He would change the subject, his hand trembling as he poured himself a glass of water. It was a pattern she had learned to accept, a closed door she knew better than to try to open. But the truth, as it often does, has a way of finding its own light. The first crack in the facade appeared on her 35th birthday. Robert had been diagnosed with a severe heart condition, and his health was failing fast. He had always been a man of meticulous order, and he insisted on going through all his important documents with Anya. They sat in his study, a room filled with the scent of old books and dust, as he handed her a faded leather box. "This is for you," he said, his voice raspy. "Everything you need to know is in here." Inside the box was a collection of letters, journals, and a single sepia-toned photograph. The photograph was of her mother, Lily, but she was standing beside a man Anya didn't recognize, a distinguished-looking older man with a striking resemblance to Robert. It was the first time she had ever seen a picture of her mother with anyone other than her father. The letters were from Lily, addressed to a man named Arthur. As Anya began to read, her world started to tilt on its axis. The letters spoke of a forbidden love, a passionate affair between Lily and Arthur, a man who was married to someone else. The correspondence was filled with a sense of urgency and desperation, detailing a plan for them to run away together. But that wasn't the most shocking part. The letters also revealed that Lily had been pregnant. She was carrying Arthur's child. Anya's hands trembled as she continued to read, a cold dread settling in her stomach. The letters stopped abruptly a few months before her birth. She turned her attention to the journal, a small, worn-out diary with Lily's elegant handwriting. The entries were raw and emotional, chronicling her agonizing decision to leave Arthur. She wrote about the shame, the fear of raising a child out of wedlock, and her desperate need to protect her unborn baby from the scandal. But then, an entry jumped out at her, an entry written in a frantic, almost illegible scrawl. "Robert, he says he will take the baby. He says he will raise her as his own. Arthur must never know. He must never, ever know." Anya's heart pounded in her chest. She looked at the sepia-toned photo again, this time with a horrifying clarity. The man in the picture was not her father, Robert. It was Arthur. And then she looked at the photos of her own father, the man who had raised her. Robert was a kind man with soft features and a quiet demeanor. Arthur, the man in the photo, was older, with a strong jawline and the same hazel eyes that looked back at her from the mirror every morning. A chilling thought, a terrifying suspicion, began to form in her mind. It was a thought so grotesque, so unthinkable, that she wanted to push it away, to pretend she had never opened that box. But the evidence was staring her in the face. Robert had raised her. But who was Arthur? And why had Robert taken on a child who wasn't his? A dark, tangled web was beginning to unravel. And it was only the beginning. The truth, once a whisper, was now a deafening roar in Anya's mind. The letters and journal entries laid bare a family history so deeply buried it felt like a grave. Her world, the stable, loving world she had always known, was a carefully constructed deception. She wasn't Robert's daughter. She was Arthur's. But the question remained, who was Arthur? And why did her mother, Lily, write that Robert had to keep his identity a secret? The pieces didn't fit, and the more she tried to assemble them, the more the puzzle twisted into a new, more sinister shape. Her father, Robert, was now on his deathbed, a frail shadow of the man he once was. She couldn't bring herself to confront him, not yet. The weight of this revelation was too heavy, the potential for heartbreak too great. She needed to understand first. And so, with a new, urgent purpose, she began to dig deeper. She combed through the attic, through dusty boxes of old family memorabilia. She found a photo album, its pages yellowed and brittle with age. Buried beneath a stack of old postcards and faded greeting cards, she found a group photo from the 1970s. It was a wedding. Robert was standing in the front row, looking young and a little awkward in a rented tux. And standing beside the bride, a woman with a kind, gentle smile, was the man from the sepia-toned photo, Arthur. He was the groom. And the bride? The bride was a woman she vaguely recognized from old family photos on Robert's side of the family. The woman's name was Elizabeth, Robert's sister. Anya's stomach dropped. Lily was having an affair with her uncle-in-law. No, wait. Arthur was her grandfather, not her uncle. The man who raised her was her adoptive father. His sister married the man who was her real father. No, that wasn't right either. Arthur was her biological father, and he was married to Robert's sister, Elizabeth. So Arthur was her aunt's husband. That made him her uncle by marriage. And Lily was... What was Lily's connection to Robert? Robert was raising her, a child from a secret affair. But why? This tangled web was becoming a Gordian knot, and she felt herself sinking deeper into its dark embrace. A new, more chilling possibility began to emerge. What if Arthur wasn't just a man Lily had an affair with? What if there was a deeper, more complicated connection? Anya went back to the old journals and letters. She reread every word, searching for any clue she might have missed. And there it was, in the margins of one of the later journal entries. A name, scrawled in Lily's frantic handwriting, Arthur Campbell. Anya's heart hammered against her ribs. She knew that name, Arthur Campbell. He was a prominent lawyer in Portland, a well-known figure in the community. She had seen his name in the local papers, read about his philanthropic work. He was a pillar of the community, a respected family man. He had died a few years ago, a quiet, peaceful death in his sleep. She had even sent a note of condolence to his family, a family she didn't realize was also her own. Anya did a quick search online. She found Arthur Campbell's obituary. It listed his survivors, his wife, Elizabeth, and his children, a son and a daughter. And then, there it was, a name that made the blood run cold in her veins. Robert Campbell. He was Arthur's son. Her father, Robert, was not just the man who raised her. He was the man who was supposed to be her brother. Her adopted father was actually her biological grandfather. The world spun on its axis. The pieces of the puzzle, once scattered and confusing, now snapped into a horrific, undeniable picture. Lily, a young artist, had a secret affair with her lover's father, Arthur. Arthur was married to Elizabeth, Robert's sister. No, that was still wrong. Arthur was Robert's father. Arthur was married to Robert's mother, Elizabeth. Oh God! The full weight of the truth descended on her, crushing her with its grotesque irony. Her biological father, Arthur, was also the father of the man who raised her, Robert. And Arthur's wife, Elizabeth, was Robert's mother. The woman Anya had always known as her loving grandmother. The shock was a physical blow. Her entire existence was a lie. Her father was her half-uncle. No, wait, her adopted father was her half-uncle and also her brother-in-law. Her grandmother was her aunt. No, her step-grandmother. This was an impossible, sickening tangle of family ties. Her real biological father, Arthur, was married to her grandmother, Elizabeth. And her biological mother, Lily, was having a secret affair with her grandmother's husband. And the result of that affair, Anya herself, was then taken in and raised by the man she thought was her father, but was actually the son of her biological father and the stepson of her biological mother. No, that wasn't right. Arthur was Robert's father, and Elizabeth was Arthur's wife. Elizabeth was her grandmother. Arthur was her grandfather. Lily was a young woman who had an affair with her own father-in-law, or father, or the roles were shifting, blurring, becoming a horrifying miasma of deception and betrayal. Anya felt a wave of nausea. The man she had loved and trusted her entire life, the man who had shown her nothing but kindness, was a living lie. He wasn't her father. He was her biological grandfather. He had raised her, a child of a secret affair between his own father and a woman who was supposed to be his sister. No, not his sister. Her mind was a whirlwind of confusion. Lily had an affair with her father, Arthur. And Robert, Arthur's son, had raised Anya as his own daughter. This made Arthur Anya's biological grandfather and Robert Anya's biological uncle. My adopted father was my real grandfather. The realization hit her with the force of a wrecking ball. The man who tucked her in at night, who taught her to ride a bike, who walked her down the aisle, was the father of the man who was supposed to be her father. Wait, no. My adopted father was my biological uncle. The truth was a labyrinth of pain and lies. The man she had called Dad her entire life, Robert, was her biological uncle. The man she had thought was her grandfather, Arthur, was her biological father. And the woman she had always known as her mother, Lily, was a secret lover to Arthur. And what about Elizabeth, her grandmother? She was married to Arthur. Did she know? Did she know that her husband had an affair with a much younger woman, and that the result of that affair was a child he had left with his own son to raise? The implications were staggering. Robert had not only raised her, he had kept this horrific secret for 35 years. He had borne the weight of this family's shame and tragedy, all to protect her. But protect her from what? From the truth? From the fact that her biological father was a man who had betrayed his wife and his son. A man who had left her mother to die alone and had foisted the responsibility of his child onto his own son? The truth was a bitter pill to swallow. Anya felt a profound sense of loss, not for the mother she never knew, or the father she had just discovered, but for the life she thought she had. The love she had for Robert, the man she called Dad, was real, but the foundation of that love was built on a web of lies. She felt a profound emptiness, a void where her identity should have been. The woman she thought she was, the daughter of Robert and Lily, didn't exist. She was the product of a secret affair, a ghost in her own family history. And now Robert was fading fast. He was her last link to the truth, her only hope for an explanation. She had to talk to him. She had to know why. She had to know everything. The past was no longer a distant memory. It was a hungry ghost, haunting her every waking moment. And she was about to go looking for it. Anya sat at Robert's bedside, her hand holding his frail, papery one. The room was quiet, save for the rhythmic beep of the heart monitor. The man she had called Dad her entire life, the man who had been the foundation of her world, was slipping away. The truth, a heavy, cold presence, hung between them, unspoken. She had 1,000 questions burning in her mind, but looking at his face, so peaceful and so tired, she didn't know how to begin. He opened his eyes, his gaze finding hers. "Anya," he whispered, his voice a ghost of its former self. "You found it." It wasn't a question. It was a statement, a confession. He knew. He had always known this day might come. She swallowed the lump in her throat. "Dad, I don't understand." The word "dad" felt like a lie on her tongue, but she couldn't bring herself to say anything else. He closed his eyes for a moment, a profound sadness etched on his face. "I wanted to tell you for so long," he said, his voice raspy. "But how do you tell your daughter the truth about who she is when the truth is so ugly?" He began to tell the story, a halting, painful confession that filled the quiet room. He spoke of his father, Arthur Campbell, a charismatic but ruthless man who built his law empire with a cold, calculating heart. And he spoke of his mother, Elizabeth, a quiet, gentle woman who was consumed by her husband's ambition and emotional distance. Arthur and Elizabeth's marriage was one of convenience and social status, not love. Then came Lily. She was a young, vivacious artist, a family friend of sorts, hired to do a portrait of Elizabeth. Lily was everything Elizabeth wasn't. Full of life, passionate, and unburdened by the weight of expectations. Arthur, a man who had everything, was drawn to her like a moth to a flame. He was a powerful man and she was a young, naive woman. Their affair was a secret, but it was a passionate, all-consuming one. Robert, a young man at the time, saw his father's emotional distance and his mother's quiet suffering. He idolized his father, but he also saw the darkness within him. The climax of the story came when Lily became pregnant. She was a single woman, terrified and alone. She went to Arthur, believing he would stand by her. But Arthur, a man of reputation and social standing, was horrified. He told her he would pay for an abortion, that he would give her money to disappear, but he would not, under any circumstances, acknowledge the child. His reputation was more important than his own flesh and blood. He had his own children, a son and a daughter, and he was a respected member of the community. He was a pillar of society, and the scandal would have ruined him. Lily, heartbroken and betrayed, refused. She was a fiercely independent woman, and she would not let him erase her child. She told him she would raise the baby on her own. But Arthur, in a fit of rage, threatened her. He told her if she tried to expose him, he would use his power and influence to destroy her life and ensure she could never work as an artist again. He would take her down and she would have nothing. Robert, unbeknownst to his father, had heard everything. He was a young man, a good man, and he was horrified by his father's cruelty. He had always felt a deep, quiet affection for Lily, the young woman who brought so much light into his family's suffocating world. He knew he had to do something, so he went to Lily and made her a proposition. "Let me raise her," he said. "Let me be her father." Lily, desperate and alone, agreed. Robert promised her he would tell no one. Not his mother, not his father, not his friends. He would raise the child as his own, a child of a fictitious marriage, a child of a woman who had died in childbirth. Lily, in a final heartbreaking act of love, agreed to disappear, to leave her daughter with the only man she knew she could trust. Robert's voice trailed off, exhausted. Anya's mind reeled. It was all true, but there was one final piece of the puzzle that didn't fit. The one thing that made the story even more grotesque. What about her? What about her death? Anya asked, her voice trembling. "You always said she died in childbirth." A tear rolled down Robert's cheek. "That was a lie," he whispered. "The last lie I ever told you. After she gave you to me, she had to disappear. We made a deal. She would move far away, start a new life, and I would tell everyone she had died. It was the only way to protect her, to protect you from my father's wrath." Anya's world tilted again. Her mother hadn't died. She had been alive all these years, living a life of solitude, of quiet pain. Also, her daughter could have a chance at a normal life. "So where is she?" Anya asked, the words a desperate plea. Is she still alive? Robert's eyes filled with a deep, bottomless sorrow. She lived for 10 years in quiet solitude, in a small town in Idaho. She had a quiet life, an artist living on her own. She wrote me letters. I have them all. She never stopped asking about you. She would draw pictures of you from the descriptions I gave her, pictures of a little girl with fiery red hair, playing in the park. But then, 10 years later, she was diagnosed with cancer. She passed away alone. The last letter she wrote me, it was for you. Anya's heart broke into a million pieces. The mother she never knew wasn't a ghost. She was a real woman, living a real life, a life of profound loneliness and heartbreak, all for her. She had given up everything, her child, her identity, her life, so that Anya could have a loving home. Anya held Robert's hand, her tears falling onto his. "Why?" she whispered. "Why did you do it? Why did you sacrifice your life for me?" A faint smile touched his lips, a smile filled with a love so pure and so profound it took her breath away. "Because," he said, his voice barely audible, "you were my family. You were my little girl. I loved you more than anything in the world." And a father protects his daughter, no matter the cost. And in that moment, the final, horrifying twist of the story was revealed, not as a shocking revelation but as a quiet, heartbreaking truth. Robert wasn't her biological father. No, he was her biological uncle. The man who raised her, the man she called Dad, was the son of her biological father. He was the most honorable, most selfless person in this entire tragic story. He was a man who had to carry the burden of his father's sins, a man who had sacrificed his own life and happiness to protect a child who wasn't his, but who he loved more than his own life. The full weight of the truth finally settled on Anya. Her adopted father was her biological grandfather. Her grandfather was her biological father. Her adopted father was her uncle, the son of her real father. The labyrinth of deception was gone, replaced by a devastating clarity. The love she had for Robert, the man who was now dying beside her, was a love built not on blood, but on a foundation of sacrifice, of a love so deep and pure it transcended all the lies. And in his final moments, she realized he had never lied about the most important thing of all. He had always been her father in every way that mattered. And she loved him, not just as a man who had raised her, but as the hero of her own tragic, beautiful story. The heart monitor let out a long, flat beep. The sound was a final period on the sentence of his life, a sentence written in love and sorrow. Anya held his hand, tears streaming down her face, and whispered the only word that mattered. "Dad." The silence that followed Robert's passing was a tangible presence, heavy and final. For Anya, it was the end of one chapter and the beginning of another, a new and terrifying reality where her life's foundation was revealed to be a beautiful, intricate lie. She was no longer just the daughter of Robert Campbell. She was a legacy of a secret affair, a child raised by her biological uncle to atone for her biological grandfather's sins. The truth, in all its devastating glory, was now hers to carry. In the days and weeks that followed, Anya was adrift. The grief of losing Robert was immense, but it was tangled up with the complex, disorienting grief of losing the person she thought she was. She walked through his house, not as a daughter mourning her father, but as a stranger searching for clues. She found a small, locked chest hidden in his study. Inside, she found a stack of letters, a final collection of correspondence between Robert and Lily. They were letters from the last 10 years of Lily's life, filled with her quiet pain and her enduring love for the daughter she had given up. Lily wrote about her solitary life in Idaho, about the landscapes she painted, and about the endless questions she had about Anya. Does she have my eyes? Does she laugh when she's happy? Does she still love the swing set in the backyard? The letters were a testament to a mother's love, a love that was so powerful it chose to let go, so that the child could be safe. But the final letter was different. It was written in a hurried, frantic scrawl, dated just a few days before her death. It was not addressed to Robert. It was addressed to Anya, and it was a confession, a final, heartbreaking act of a mother's love. "My darling Anya," it began, By the time you read this, I will be gone. I know you will have questions, so many questions. I want you to know the truth. I loved your father, Arthur, with a passion that burned me alive. But I loved you more. I made a mistake, a terrible, terrible mistake. I let him take away my voice, my life, my chance at being a mother to you. But in my final moments, I can't go without telling you the truth. Your father, Arthur, was not just my lover. He was my father. He was my real father. Anya's mind screamed in silent protest. No, couldn't be. The twisted knot of her family tree was unraveling into a new, more grotesque shape. Lily wasn't just the lover of her biological grandfather. She was his daughter. Arthur, the powerful, respected lawyer, had not only betrayed his wife, he had committed incest with his own daughter, and the result was Anya. The child he had refused to acknowledge, the child he had left for his son to raise, was also his own flesh and blood, a horrifying consequence of a secret, incestuous affair. The final piece of the puzzle, a piece so dark and twisted it felt like it belonged in a Gothic novel, had been revealed. The man she thought was her father, Robert, was actually her half-uncle. No, not a half-uncle, but a man who was both her biological uncle and her step-uncle. And the man she had called her grandfather was her biological father and her grandfather. And the woman she had always known as her mother had been both her birth mother and her biological aunt. The family tree was a gnarled, diseased thing, a testament to a monstrous deception that had haunted her family for decades. Anya felt a profound sense of emptiness, a void where her identity had once been. The woman she thought she was, the person she had built her life around, didn't exist. She was the product of a double betrayal, a dark secret buried so deep it had taken 35 years to surface. The truth was a physical weight on her soul, a burden she didn't know how to carry. She had been born from a lie, raised on a lie, and the love she had for the man who raised her was built on a foundation of unspoken grief and profound sacrifice. But in the midst of this devastating truth, she found a strange, quiet kind of solace. Robert had not been a liar. He had been a hero. He had seen the ugliness and darkness in his own family and had chosen to create a new, beautiful reality for her. He had sacrificed his own chance at love and family, all to give her a chance at a normal life. He had loved her unconditionally, not because she was his blood, but because she was his little girl. His love was the only pure thing in this entire sordid story. And the love Lily had for her was a love that had chosen to suffer in solitude so that her daughter could be happy. The house in the suburbs of Portland no longer felt like a prison of lies. It felt like a monument to a profound, tragic love story. It was a place where a man had given up everything to protect a child, and where a mother had chosen to disappear to give her daughter a future. The swing set in the backyard, once a symbol of a forgotten past, now felt like a testament to a love so strong it was willing to let go. Anya realized she was not a victim of this story. She was the survivor. She was the one who had been given a second chance at life, a life built on a foundation of a love so deep it had been willing to hide the truth for 35 years. She may have been born of a dark, twisted secret, but she was raised in the light of an unconditional love. And in the end, that was all that mattered. The story of the house in Portland, of the man who was both a father and a grandfather, is a story about the lies we tell to protect the ones we love. It's a story about the dark secrets that lurk beneath the surface of seemingly perfect lives. But most importantly, it's a story about the profound, unbreakable power of love. The kind of love that transcends blood, that forgives sins, and that chooses to protect the innocent at all costs. It's a testament to the fact that family isn't just about blood. It's about who chooses to stand by you, who chooses to protect you, and who chooses to love you no matter what. This is a story that has been hidden for over 3 decades, but the truth, like a river, always finds its way to the sea. And if you want to keep exploring the darkest secrets of family and the most profound acts of love, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next episode. There are so many stories just waiting to be told.